Hello, welcome to Between Two People. My name is George,
And I'm Richard.
and we are here to discuss whatever moves our minds during the day. So today's our first show. It's our introductory show. It's going to be just a little short clip, but we felt like we wanted to make a show talking about things that interested us. So we're going to talk about things like psychology, philosophy,
Movies, books, sports, games.
do reviews on things that we are interested in.
Mm-hmm.
So
Or
today,
just talk.
yeah, we're just going to talk.
Mm-hmm. But today we're actually going to talk about the lovely topic of emotions.
Emotions.
Mm.
Fantastic, absolutely.
And this could actually take forever to talk about.
But we don't have time because we're college students and we have class and we have things we have to do.
Yeah, that are more important than this.
So this is going to be a quick show today.
Yeah. But before 10 minutes before this show, I was thinking, why do humans have emotions in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
And on a purely basic, bodily level or evolutionary idea of emotions, I think they're necessary for the progression and I guess progression is the best word, of mankind to continue forward, because emotions are what lead us to attraction towards females, so that's procreation.
Yeah.
Emotions also are like fear and
anger.
Fear and anger. Both of those are very necessary for survival, especially if we were living in tents in the wilderness. And then for some reason I can't think of any other emotion. Those
Anger, fear, hate, love. Well, love's not an emotion, is it?
right. That's why I kind of tended not to say that.
Okay, is lust an emotion?
I don't know.
I think lust is kind of the part of like an emotional response you have. You know, that, like you said, when it comes to like women, or if you're a woman with man, that sort of bond. So is lust wrong in all cases, or is it appropriate in certain cases?
I don't know. I figured we'd have another one of these about love, because that one is just so in depth.
It is, yeah.
And so I think we can talk about that when we.
We'll probably have like a whole series of love
of love. Yeah, because there's just so much to talk about love. Okay, as a disclaimer, neither of us are psychologists or any professionals.
We're not professional in any way.
We're just intuitive people who like to talk about things that are of interest to us. So don't take it with a grain of salt, whatever we say.
So how appropriate or necessary do you think emotions are now in a world where we're not hunter-gatherers and we have all these things as the sort of animalistic part of our being that were necessary towards survival? A lot of those things I think aren't necessary now because we have technology.
Mm-hmm. I think they're still necessary to keep us doing, physiologically beneficial things such as eating, sleeping. Both of those make us happy, and if we don't do those, then our hormones get unbalanced, and we still become very emotional, whether it be sad, happy,
exactly.
funny. Just all these. Funny's not an emotion, but all these things. But even away from, I think because we're not in that society anymore, where we have to fight to survive, or we have to do these things, it's easier for us to eat and sleep and drink. So those emotions, I think, are not as powerful as they once were. I'm sure. They've declined evolutionarily.
Right.
But nowadays, people's emotions, they seem almost sometimes detrimental.
Exactly.
Especially to
get out of control.
Mm-hmm. And also, let's say the emotion of finding joy or happiness with being with someone, right? Not whether or not it's a girl, enjoying family. Okay, so I think if we go back in time, I think that was beneficial towards having communities where it was much more likelihood to survive, right? But nowadays, we all still have that desire. And I think, but a lot of times people put up walls. So it makes it very difficult to have a relationship, whether or not it be with a female or a male, or with, friendship.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes it very difficult. So why do people put up these walls? Where does that come from?
I think it's interesting. And when I think about an example of something I experienced recently. Emotional walls, you think of them as like a defense mechanism to
Right.
protect yourself.
But why do we need that sort of protection? We're
That's
afraid
the
of
thing.
being hurt.
It's
but
fear, right? I feel like fear is at the root of so many things we do. You have this. You have the emotional walls. You have people who are insecure. Essentially, insecurities stem from fear of not being
rejection.
adequate. Of being rejected.
of
by
being
people.
ostracized by your community.
Yeah, I think that's no secret. That's not
No,
the
everyone.
most profound thing.
If no one knows that, then they will learn eventually.
Exactly. So how do we overcome that? If the first thing is you need to be aware of that, because I think a lot of times people, and even myself, I'll put up. I have fears that maybe I'm not even aware of, and sometimes maybe one day I'll be like, wow, I realize I do this because I'm afraid of rejection. I'm afraid of being exposed.
Yeah.
It's like almost like a primordial thing back to like childhood, when maybe you had bad experiences in childhood of being rejected, and so you make sure you do what you can to not have that happen. Like,
I think nowadays, because I can say things like this because I'm about 6 years old and I can see the past, firsthand.
you say you're 6 years old?
60.
Oh, you're 60.
Yeah, so I've had a good amount of life experience. So I think though nowadays, since people are very politically correct, you're treading on eggshells. You're too afraid to hurt people's feelings, and then since they don't get their feelings hurt, they don't understand how to take it. And I think humanity is deconditioned in relationships,
Yeah.
even in friend
Yeah.
like friendship relationships. They don't know how to have them, or they don't know how to be blunt with people about things when it's necessary, or how it's. I really think that
It's almost
like being politically correct has declined, has made humanity decline.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Being politically correct, like for example, I remember when I was in high school, I had a geography teacher who, she wasn't much of a teacher type. She was actually someone who her whole goal was like she wanted to become a principal, so she was just kind of teaching because she had to. But they recently changed, BC and AD, before Christ and Anno Domini, to a politically correct version now that we use BCE, right, and CE.
Yeah, before Common Era.
Common Era.
But they didn't change the date at which they decided what was BCE and CE. It's still the year zero.
There's a funny meme. It's like, oh, what else? Tell me else. Something else that happened of significance in the year 1 or 0.
And I think they made like some really stupid. Like they went back to the year and they said something about the king. I don't know.
I mean, is it because it offends people that the years are based around a Judeo-Christian thing?
Yeah, it's the Gregorian calendar.
The Gregorian calendar. There's actually.
What's funny is the BCE and CE actually offended my teacher now.
I'm offended.
She said, "Don't use BCE and CE," but this is the reason why. Because she said that not everyone adheres to the Gregorian calendar, and when you say before Common Era, that means that everyone does it. And she said not everyone's Christian or anything. So when you say CE or AD and BC, she says you are explicitly saying that you adhere to that calendar, and that's the time that you're talking about. And so others who don't adhere to it will be like, okay. But when you say Common Era and before Common Era, see, I think that's just another, like, even politically correctness offends somebody.
Right.
You're going to always offend someone, so just, I mean, not don't care, but also understand that and don't tread on eggshells. When things need to be said or done, I think it's important because then it also helps the other person how to deal with their emotions.
Yeah, I think this whole thing about being offended is well connected to emotions. There's a great famous British actor who I'm trying to remember what his name was, because I was just watching something about this that you could see where he talks about being offended, and he's like, people, you hear a lot of times say people like, oh, I'm offended by that.
Get over it.
Like who? So what? Right? The point he's making is that being offended, you're essentially complaining like the thing that you said, I don't agree with it, and it bothers me.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is that, like, I think that's connected to emotion, because one of the problems people have with emotions is that they can't separate the individual from an idea they're proposing.
Absolutely.
For example, so if you look at a good example of this is two Supreme Court justices, Antonin Scalia and Sandra Day O'Connor. I think it's Sandra Day O'Connor. No. It's Ruth Bader Ginsburg. They're both best friends, and they can spend time with each other. Yet politically, they are opposite. They could not be more opposite, I would say, and it's because they're able to separate their ideas from who they are as a person. And I think when you get emotional about these things, it's a lack of maturity, a lack of understanding about the fact that this person, you have to give allowance to the fact that they have this idea based on their set of understanding about things. So you can give allowance to the fact that maybe there's information you have that they don't. Because that's all kind of how we make our decisions. And I had a friend who got very emotionally involved in a conversation I was having with her, and she essentially now refuses to talk to me because the ideas that I was trying to propose to her and say, this is how I see it, and this is my idea, and she thought in her own mind, this idea means this to her, but for me it means something else. And I tried to explain that to her, but the idea, she thought, this means that you're going to do something that's unjust to a person, it's not fair to people, therefore this person, I think, he actually believes that he's being unfair, and to think that he can accept that and think that that's okay is disgusting to me, therefore he's a disgusting person. He's a despicable person. Which is simply not the case. I could think about someone else and think, well, you are also doing that from your point of view. But I understand that their point of view is based on a set of beliefs that I believe are on false. They're based on false
premise.
Right, on a false premise. And so I understand that, and once you can understand that, that's where you can start to separate the idea from the person and think, well, this doesn't mean that they're a despicable person at all. No, maybe I believe they have a lack of understanding. That's fine.
Mm-hmm. I think I completely agree. And I also think, though, that this insecurity, which is why people, I think we said, which was the premise why people have difficult time with emotions, because there's an insecurity. And I think also the insecurity comes from, or stems also from the fact that family life in America is declining. So remember when I said that evolutionarily, relationships with people were beneficial in that you had a community to survive with, right? Mm-hmm. I still think that's a base, like a base fundamental idea in human psyche, because we all need that family. I think family life is very, very important, and when you have 50% of marriages divorcing, you no longer have the stability of that family life, and as a child of a family who's been divorced, mm-hmm. I think that it can easily create a lack of security, and especially self-security, because a lot of children, I know this has been portrayed in movies and books, a lot of children think that the divorce stemmed from them, right, was their fault. And that's not that. The majority of the time, that's not the case. My alarm's going off.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. But so I think also the lack of good family life, drastically.
Absolutely.
Okay, forget the word drastically. I don't know where I was going with that, but I think it does. Drastically affects the psychology of everyone.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Also speaking from someone who's come from the family's divorce, I think a lot of that does stem from, first of all, the people who get married didn't have a great understanding of what it meant of what marriage really was. Mm-hmm. And I think this also ties into emotion in that emotions, like we were saying, were useful for the progression of humanity to continue life.
Mm-hmm.
And right now we see how this breakdown of the family can be tied into how emotions are not put in their place. Emotions are essential. Emotions are such a huge component to our lives.
Mm-hmm.
Look at Aristotle's ethos, pathos, logos. Part of it was logic. We are
very illogical.
We understand.
Sometimes.
Yeah, we can be illogical, but we understand logic and use
Mm-hmm.
it for things that are empirical.
Mm-hmm.
But he gave credence to the fact that emotions, not necessarily that they were good for making decisions about things, but that they were an essential part of the human psyche that you simply can't get rid of. You can't say, I'm going to condition myself to get rid of my emotions, right?
But they need to be controlled, and I think the way they can be controlled is through logic. It's probably what he talked about. I don't know, I haven't read what you're talking about, but is that the premise of it?
Right. Well, logic and emotion are to be
Not separated.
What we have to
They
learn
should
to
be
do is
separated.
to essentially separate logic from emotion
Oh.
when appropriate.
Okay, when appropriate. But I think when is it?
It's that's appropriate. Like in the conditions we're talking about, anything. For example, you have different types of you have people who make decisions more based on emotions and people who make decisions more based on logic. Now, the people who make decisions more based on logical deduction and reasoning, there are certain situations where that's appropriate. You could say things like anything in politics. When you make policy and law, these things obviously should not be
just like gut feeling. I feel like this. It should be like that. Yeah.
Now this gets sticky. I mean, when is the more emotional decision appropriate? To make a sort of general blanket statement, things that are not empirically based, things that are not academic, things that aren't work related.
Like if you have so Matthew and I are both very intuitive people, so I think when you have something that is less empirical, but it's just an intuitive perception of what needs to be done, I think it's appropriate.
It's usually, I think, having to do with people, relationships with people, is the time when emotions are most appropriate. Let's go back to the workplace for a second. When you use emotions in a workplace, when it's not appropriate,
you get
let's say, you can get fired. Let's say it's a colleague who's doing that, and they're getting very emotional over a situation. In that situation, I would venture to say that me using my emotional capacities, my ability to connect emotionally, that's an appropriate time to try to handle a situation using emotions. If someone's sad, empathy, that kind of thing. That's where logic doesn't help people. If you want to get someone emotionally on the right track, usually giving them a logical thing like, you shouldn't be sad because of A, B, and C, that's not going to make them feel better. If you want to make people feel better, usually...
You portray the emotion of happiness, and then I think emotions are very... what's the word? How diseases can transfer from one person to another?
Contagious.
I think emotions are very contagious.
Yeah, absolutely. There's actually a funny... video I saw where there's a guy laughing at a train station. You might have seen this.
Oh yeah, that's great.
There's a guy laughing at a train station. They do
for
this,
no reason. They
do this as a project. They do this on purpose to try to get these people to laugh. So it's a bleak day. He's at a train station. He just starts laughing and laughing, and he just keeps laughing. And then you see at first people are they're sitting there minding their business, and they're like
smiling.
But and then after a second they're they can't help but kind of smile and laugh. And then by the end of the thing, everybody's just laughing out loud
for no
reason, other than the fact that happiness is a contagious thing, right? So that's something where emotion is a fantastic thing. Movies, things that make you cry. When you see an emotion movie that makes you cry, that's fantastic. You don't think that movie wasn't logical and therefore isn't good. So when we talk about, I think this all comes back to what is good, what is not good. Logic, emotion,
both good.
Both good in certain respects. They can be used poorly and then be bad in certain respects. So it's all about knowing when to do that.
What's appropriate. And I think the good the good practice is just to have a medium between the two. But it's getting late, and actually it's early in the day, but late for me because I need to do things. And so, if we haven't talked about something, just please comment. Tell us, your ideas about emotions and what you think. And of course, like having the appropriate medium between logic and emotion is very difficult.
Yeah.
And he really sucks at it.
So supply us with any comments you think, thoughts about this, and maybe we can even make an additional video in regards to this if you have any questions. So
we're probably gonna try and do this about once a week. Of course, the keyword try. And then hopefully soon we'll talk about love, because we didn't touch love at all in this emotional idea. I think that's for a purpose. And that'll take multiple. So let us know your ideas about emotion, other things you want to see us talk about. Comments, critiques, whatever. We won't get upset.
We'll keep our emotional involvement to a minimum.
Yes, exactly.
Possibly.
All right. Well, thank you for watching.
Thank you for watching.
Subscribe.